political. And the political, if you get into political shit, you're going to be disappointed. But if you get into the spiritual side, you see, then that's where the shit opens up. The magic begins. You see, that's where the magic begins. When the Isis and Osiris takes the White House on the spiritual side, you got to admit that that is a spiritual phenomenon. You see, that is a spiritual phenomenon. And you have to, you see.
Let me now turn to our program for the future.
Economy right now, it's extremely supporting of the president and his policy.
FBI scientists have found chemical traces consistent with a bomb or a missile on a piece of wreckage.
Police using clubs and tear gas against demonstrators.
Your mother, so-and-so, and a white fascist. Like they said, you're getting some of your own medicine.
There's a war on between heaven and hell, and you are on the front lines. What war? The only war. Earth is the battlefield, human souls the prize. Just the way it's always been.
While in the seventh state of slumber, I release 7 thunders from the tear. I float to your tomb ray and walk for 70. It's 6 trillion days to resurrect through 7 transitions of death. I unveil 7 plagues.
Starving of Somalia already knew it. Now the United Nations has confirmed it. The severe drought in the Horn of Africa has reached famine conditions. And by any standards, the growing number of victims is truly staggering. The UN's Food Agency says that now 12 million people need emergency aid, with hundreds amongst that lot dying every single day. In the regions where famine has been declared, close to 1/3 of the population is suffering from starvation and mass displacement. And that sent the UN cap in hand to the international community. It now needs $300 million over the next 2 months, and that amount simply to feed the hungry. Mohammed Ado has our report.
It's now official. Parts of Somalia are in a state of famine, the first in the 21st century. The United Nations Humanitarian Coordinator for Somalia, Mark Bowden, outlined what he called the shocking severity of the problem. The lower Shabelle and Bakol regions in the south, Somalia's traditional food-growing areas, now suffer from famine, with malnutrition rates there the highest in the world.
Thousands of dead blackbirds rained down on an Arkansas neighborhood, like a scene out of Alfred Hitchcock's horror movie, The Birds. Experts say they died from blunt force trauma in the air, but what caused the trauma is a mystery. Then as many as 2 million dead fish in Maryland. But the mystery is not just in the US. In the UK, 40,000 velvet crabs littered the coast. Brazil, 100 tons of lifeless fish floated. And in Sweden, jackdaws fell in the dead of the night.
We reached the hill half an hour earlier and the road was completely clean. Then after half an hour the road was black and we became aware that the road was covered with dead birds or dying birds.
Next came Italy. Over 700 turtle doves fell, echoing the Arkansas bird deaths. Some lay hanging in the trees.
Here is one still alive. It let us take it, which isn't normal. This dove has a few hours of life left.
Across the world, the bizarre phenomena of creatures raining down or washing up on shore has mystified scientists. For the 2 million dead fish in Maryland, they do have an answer.
Our theory is that there was a very rapid temperature drop. Obviously, these are a type of fish that are susceptible to cold temperatures, but there was a very rapid drop.
Poisoning, pollution, the cold snap, or something more sinister. If only birds could talk, the surviving ones would have a story to tell. Conspiracy theorists have had a field day with talk of the end of the world being nigh. Only one thing is certain. The mystery of these mass deaths is yet to be solved. Tazeen Ahmed, NBC News, London.
The new year is off to a bizarre beginning in Arkansas. 100,000 drumfish washed up along the Arkansas River. Scientists say disease is likely to blame. On their own, dead fish might not raise too many eyebrows. But a little more than 100 miles away in Beebe, there's another animal mystery. Just before the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve, thousands of birds started falling from the sky.
I thought it was out of an Albert Hitchcock movie. Thought the mayor was messing with me when he called me. He got me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and told me he had birds falling out of the sky.
Residents rang in 2011 to scenes like this. On roads, on roofs, on lawns, up to 5,000 blackbirds fell within a 1-mile area. Most were dead.
Everybody's kind of amazed at this happening.
The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission says this phenomenon is not as unusual as it might seem. The likely culprit is a lightning strike or high-altitude hail, possibly even fireworks. Investigators say there is no connection between the dead fish and the dead birds. No matter what the explanation for these odd events, some in Arkansas say 2011 is off to an ominous...
But not as we know it. These are synthetic cells, bacteria that have been hijacked with man-made DNA to produce a new species that's never before existed in nature. Their American creator believes artificial life can be designed in the lab to produce biofuels to solve the energy crisis, clean up environmental disasters, even make new chemicals or food ingredients. At a dramatic Washington news conference, Dr. Craig Venter said the technology could make new vaccines, perhaps even for the common cold, and make old ones more quickly.
We have ongoing funding to try and use these new synthetic DNA tools to perhaps make the flu vaccine that you might get next year. Because instead of taking weeks to months to make these, Dan's team can now make these in less than 24 hours.
To create life, the scientists took a bacterium and removed its genetic material. They then made short sequences of artificial DNA, which were bolted together into a long chain by yeast cells. The artificial genetic code was then injected back into the bacterium, where it rebooted as a whole new life form that grew and replicated as normal. But already some ethics experts have warned that the scientists are playing God and fear what would happen if the new species was released into the environment, and there could be sinister uses of the technology too.
Personally, I think that the greatest issue posed by this research is not really anything to do with the fact that it's artificial life as such. It's to do with the potential for this kind of research to be misused to create pathogens, designer pathogens potentially, that could be used in biological weapons by either state-sponsored militaries or bioterrorists.
This is the dawn of a new age of synthetic biology. The race is now on to harness its scientific potential, but it also raises the question, if life can be designed on a computer and created on a laboratory bench, what's the difference between a living organism and a machine? Thomas Moore, Sky News.
The magnetic North Pole is moving towards Russia. We'll tell you what that could possibly have to do with an airport in Florida when we come right back. Just when you thought there couldn't be more change going on in the world, it turns out magnetic north is moving. Aviators knew this. It's always moved, but not like this. In fact, it's on the move about 40 miles a year now along the polar cap toward Russia. It's a natural, unstoppable occurrence.